Welcome back. We are continuing on in our video series of 0 to 60 in M365, where I get you up to speed on how to administrate or minister your Microsoft 365 tenant. And in this video, we're going to be focusing on Intune, and we're going to talk about a few key areas when enrolling devices. So with that out of the way, let's get started. Defensive insights within a compressed format. So we can see here we've loaded into our Microsoft Intune Admin Center. And when you're thrown in, you have this overview that you can have a look at to see an overview of the devices that you have enrolled. You can see in this environment, we've got 2 Windows devices, 2 iOS, iPad OS devices, and 1 Mac OS device. No Android, no Linux at the time of recording. But we're going to focus primarily this video under one of the areas that I think will be most interesting, which is under devices, and then we're going to click on our Windows devices. I'm going to talk about enrollment. So enrollment is a word that may conjure up a few ideas. It might actually bring some nightmares to some people. I think it's amazing when it's set up properly and really, really clean. So enrollment is your Autopilot. You've got 2 different versions of Autopilot now. It also is the place to go if you want to roll out Windows Hello for Business through Intune, through their just built-in enrollment profile. I think it's easiest here, as well as some other cool things like checking your CNAME validation, enrollment notifications, and some extra little bits there. But we're going to focus primarily today on Windows Hello for Business, and we'll touch on Autopilot as well. So Windows Hello for Business, think of this as your ability to roll out PIN requirement, and if the device is able to roll out Windows Hello sign-in for like facial recognition or fingerprint. You can also do smart card login. So it's a good thing to have. And if your devices are running Windows 11 with a TPM chip, I believe it's of above 2.0, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but you will have the ability to have Windows Hello for Business. And this just makes it easier for your users to log in because they don't have to remember their password to their user identity. They remember a key that is linked to the TPM chip of that device. So the PIN that they set on that device is not going to go and be set on other devices unless they go and set that on other devices. So it's tied to the hardware security key of that computer. And that is cool because it makes it easy for the users to log in, but it's also securely encrypted to the chip of the device. So if I just backtrack a little bit, in Intune, you're going to go to your devices, then from devices, Windows, then from Windows, enrollment, and then Windows Hello for Business. And if you haven't turned this on already, it should be all grayed out with the option to enable it. Now, this is something that's going to be applied to all users, so bear in mind if you have devices that can't accept it, then maybe this isn't the way to do it for you, and potentially have a look at creating a configuration profile and rolling it out to a subset of users that are using devices that support it. But in this environment, we're just going to use this, and I'm going to just read through what is set up here, give a little bit of context, so that you know when you're setting it up what you're doing. So configure Windows Hello for Business. Yep, I want to do that. Use the TPM. Yep, require that. I mean, by now in 2025, given that Windows 10 is coming to end of life, we should all be requiring TPM in a business setting because we're only going to have to in the future. And now's the time to upgrade because Windows 11 is requiring it since a long time ago, and now we're getting things at end of life. This should be required in a business setting. Then you have your minimum pin length and maximum pin length. So I've set here a 6 character minimum pin length with a maximum of 127. Your environment may vary. I recommend to avoid doing small pins, because usually that's like a memorable code that someone's repeated to use. Say they might be using their PIN code for their bank or their date of birth, but try to get it in a weird amount that it's going to push the user to use something that's unique. So the next part about that, following on, is to allow lowercase letters, uppercase, special characters in it as well. Now you can set this to required. I'm going to leave it for now, but if you wanted to avoid people using date of birth or repeatable characters, you could require lowercase, uppercase, and special characters. And if you're following a framework, check to see if that framework requires it. More than likely it will. Next is pin expiration. This is set to never, but you can set to how long you want. And then remember pin history. So I'm recalling CIS having, I believe, 24 on their history. CIS framework, that is, the Center of Information Security. They provide a framework like NIST, like Essential 8, and from memory, and I could be wrong, it was either 24 or 25, that they allow the history of that pin to be held, meaning that if a user is to change their pin, you don't want it to be repeating something from the history of 24 times, so that after it exceeds that, then they can repeat it, but they can't during that time. Allow biometric authentication. Sure, great. Use enhanced anti-spoofing when available. Yes. This says here, if yes, devices use enhanced anti-spoofing when available. If no, anti-spoofing will be blocked, not configured, or honor configurations done on the client. I'm not entirely read up at this time on what is actually being rolled out here, but if it's more security to enhance anti-spoofing, I don't see a reason to not roll that out unless you're having a weird configuration issue. So yes, is set here. Do you want to allow phone sign in? Now I've said no, but your environment may vary. If you're using mobile devices that are enrolled and have a configuration profile assigned to them so that they're locked down too, then you may want to have that. But in this environment, I'm thinking of a desktop, primarily desktop environment where mobile devices are personal use. So that's set to no. Enable enhanced sign-in security. So we have set that to be enabled on systems with capable hardware. All right. So this is, again, I'm setting this up the same sort of reasoning as anti-spoofing. If it can run it, do it. That's great. The new security keys for sign-in is set to enable. Now, I want to put a little note here. If you do want to use FIDO keys, say, like your YubiKey, I don't know if you can see that. Yep, YubiKey for your sign-in, you can do it. It's going to need to be enabled here, but it's also going to be needing to have a configuration profile if you want to sign in with it, which needs to be rolled out via Intune. Additionally, you need to have it as an enabled form of MFA in Entra. So let me know in the comments if you want a dedicated video on setting up FIDO keys. I can definitely do that. So once that's all set up, you press save and that rolls out. And then your devices will require users to set up their PIN, or otherwise their Windows Hello sign-in, where they use facial recognition on supported cameras, otherwise fingerprint, otherwise they can use a security key. So the next area that we can talk about is Windows Autopilot. And Autopilot can get confusing at times, but I want to show how simple it is. When you run through it one time, you'll kind of understand what it is and what it's doing and how to implement it. So you've got Windows Autopilot, which is the traditional way of doing things, and you've got this new Windows Autopilot Device Preparation. Now, first of all, we'll focus on the classic way of doing things. So with classic Windows Autopilot, you go to Deployment Profiles, you create a profile. So in this case, we have this profile here called YouTube Demo. If I edit this to show you what settings you have the options of deployment mode. So because this is admin driven in this environment, we're going to go self-deploying, but you do have the option to have a user driven approach. And that just gives you the availability of all these other controls here, so that when the installation of Windows happens, the user has more control over some of the options, or rather you expose more controls to the user of the options they have. So in some environments that may be helpful, but I think generally speaking, you're going to have a system admin that is managing your Microsoft 365 tenant, because with a system admin, you're going to be deploying this with the policies that you want or that the company wants and rolling it out that way, trying to get the user to have the least touch points as possible. So here we have it self-deploying. We have the region set to English Australia, automatically configuring the keyboard, yes, and applying a device name template, yes. So device name templates are really cool, they're really handy. They're the way in which we can name a device during the enrollment process. So here I have the distinguishing blue for blue folder, then I have Windows PC, and then I have this little string here, and this is taken straight from this text here. Microsoft provides this macro that gives you a random number, and then this little X value can be replaced with how many digits you want. So I'm saying here, give me a random number of 3 digits to be appended after this dash. So that'll give me blue, Windows PC, dash, and 3 numbers. Then we review and save, and we apply that to a group. Now, if I go back to groups and all groups, we can see that I have Windows Autopilot V1 Windows devices. This is representing the classic way of doing it. And you have a group that you create, and you can add devices to it, or Windows Autopilot will add those devices to the group when you add their hardware hash value. So in the case of this device, just because I know the legacy and the history of it, I enrolled it directly to Entra, and then I added it as a member of Autopilot. There's a little tag within Autopilot to give you the option to add the ability of devices already in the group to be available for Autopilot. So you'll see here, if I go back and create a profile, I'll name this one Demo, and see here, convert all target devices to Autopilot. Yes. So this allows you, in an environment that hasn't had Autopilot but has enrolled devices, you can say yes, and you can add all the devices to that group and they will be able to be converted. It does not mean that it will interrupt those devices. It means that they will be available to have the Autopilot reset option within Intune, at which case you can have planned maintenance to roll that out should you need to. But it won't push it out without you pressing that for your intervention. But it's good to know that you can do that, because in big environments, say you're in a corporation that's had a tenant for quite a few years, you have enrolled devices, but you want to set up Autopilot and you want to have it available to every device, so that if you need to reset it because someone moves or someone changes their role, you have it there at a click of a button. And what it looks like when it is available is, if we go back to our devices, Windows, and I'm going to grab my device here, you have an option. Sorry, I've missed it, is here. You have an option here, Autopilot Reset, and that's what will become available to all these other devices, so that you can click that and reset it, taking it through the Autopilot provisioning process. Now, if we go back to our devices and we go Windows and then enrollment, if we look under devices here, we can see the devices with their serial number, manufacturer, model, and some more information. And in the case that you were wanting to provision a device before sending it out, or as it was sent out when it connected to the internet, it would start to provision for an end user, what you do is you click import, and you import a CSV following the formatting requirements that are linked here. So you can see here that it talks about manually collecting the hardware identity of devices and for their hardware hashes and uploading it. So I have never done this in practice, but I believe that a lot of vendors will provide that information to you if you ask and require that, so that you can upload it here, have the device ready to be provisioned, and when it connects, it will then start to go through the process of Windows Autopilot enrolling. Now, with that out of the way of showing how enrollment works for Windows Autopilot, I want to now show you how Windows Autopilot Device Preparation fits in. So at the time of recording this video, it seems that Device Preparation has a new preview, which I'm not going to get to in this video. We're going to have to make a dedicated video on that, but I'm going to cover user-driven approach. So in the scenario that you have a device in the wild, or you want to send a device out and you don't have the hardware hash, what you can do is have a user-driven approach from the get-go. So you can have it tied to the user identity so that when they log in, say in the case myself, if I log in with Jordan at bluefolder.zip, it's going to go, hey, I know that user, they're in this group and they have the device preparation policy applied to them, so this device needs to be prepared for autopilot. Now, before I click on this, I'm going to show you the two groups that you need to create. So we go to all groups. You're going to notice that there's two groups for version 2 here that I have versus the version 1. A little note here to say it is not called version 1 and version 2. That's just something that has been colloquially shared in the environment with different people. Cross-platform on YouTube, people have been saying version 1, version 2. I don't believe, I'm not sure, but I don't believe that version 2 device preparation is replacing the other one, but this is a way of distinguishing it in names. So version 2 has these two groups versus 1. You've got a device group and a users group. So device group is interesting. You create this group, but you have to have an owner of the group, and the owner has to be a service principal called Intune Provisioning Client. So you just add an owner and you search and it'll be in your environment. And you add that, and what that does is the Intune Provisioning Client, during the enrollment process, picks up the device and goes, add it to this group. And then it adds the device to the group. All right, so think of it like they're trying to automate that process of you having to add the device in to the devices group for autopilot. Now the Intune Provisioning Service Principal is going to add that in for you. All right. Now the other group that you need to add is users, and this is where you are tying it to what users are allowed to enroll devices to Windows Autopilot with device preparation. So in here, if I go to members, we're going to see I'm applied here, but little check on this, a little area in which can get you caught out if you don't take the due diligence, is actually the little rule in Entra. So you can have a user set here, and that's perfect, and we'll continue on in a minute, but I want to show you one other area that may catch you by surprise. So in Entra, under devices and then all devices, then in device settings, you need to make sure that you're checking this. Users may join devices to Microsoft Entra, and you need to add the user that you have added in this group. Otherwise, they'll get to a certain process and it'll say blocked, which is not ideal. So make sure that you add them both here and to this group. So once those groups are created, we can go back to our devices, Windows enrollment, and go to device preparation policy. and we're going to go create user driven. Skip the introduction. Give it a meaningful name with an emoji as always. Then what device group are we adding it to? All right, well, we've gone ahead and created our device group with the owner of the Intune provisioning service principal. And then there's this extra setting that we don't get in the traditional version 1 Intune Windows Autopilot. And that's our configuration settings. So, all right, we're going to have it deployment mode user driven. We're going to have it as a single user, and we're going to make it Microsoft Entra joined. But do we want the user account that's joining to be administrator or a standard user? So generally speaking, if the user is setting it up and it's not an admin going around manually doing this, you're probably going to have it as standard user. An out-of-box experience. How many minutes allowed before showing installation error? What's your custom error message? Do you want to allow users to skip setup after multiple attempts? So, look, your mileage may vary, but I would generally set this to no, because this may allow your user to then set up a local admin account, which is going to cause more issues. Probably better for them to reach out and say, hey, look, it's just not working, and then get your admin involved. Next is, do you want to show a link to diagnostics? It's up to you. Again, probably in a user-driven approach, you may not need to show a link to diagnostics, but if you want more context during that process, you may want to turn that on. And next is the apps. So this is really cool. So I think the one area that system admins may be familiar with is needing to get your company portal deployed straight away on these devices. So you can actually do that during the onboarding process. So we can go add apps. We see all of our apps within our Intune portal, and we can go, right, add company portal, add our 365 apps, and say add Edge. And then we go save. So those will now be rolled out during the deployment process. And then next is scripts. So where I've found this really helpful is if you want to install an RMM or another tool, or you want to run scripts to disable things like NetBIOS, or you want to have your TLS version only allowing a particular level. So you can have all of that run during the deployment process so that when your user gets started, they don't have to wait for it to sync to then get the configuration profiles. You don't need to necessarily ask them to restart their computer depending on what's happening, but you get a more secure state out of the box to then go, you can start. If it's logged in, go for it. Go for gold. So that's really cool that that's there. Next is your scope tags assignments. So what group are we assigning it to? Again, we've already gone ahead and created that. So V2 for our users. Remember, under Entra, devices, all devices, device settings. For the users that are allowed to Entra join devices, you must add them there. Next, and then save. And once that's done, you can go ahead and tell your user to log in with their company username and password, use the MFA that's required, and it will begin the enrollment process. So that's really, really cool. And we're going to cover off in another video how there is actually a new option here. This is totally new to me, automatic, and that could be interesting. It could make things even easier. But for now, without the preview showing, there is a use case for both of these. Whereas Autopilot is generally, in my mind, the admin-driven device-specific way of doing things, whereas Autopilot with device preparation is a user-driven approach and allows you to roll out extra things like your apps and scripts during the enrollment process. So that covers our Windows Autopilot portion of this video. I want to talk about enrollment notifications to cap this video off. So enrollment notifications are the notifications that are sent to users after they enroll. So I'm going to add a name to a policy here that we create on camera. We'll call this one YouTube demo. And then do we want to send a push notification or email notification? So if you've watched my Apple series, you would have noticed that I spoke about notifications in that as well. And I said that push notifications generally are sort of forgotten, not noticed, although they're cool to be able to have. But really, email notifications in a corporate setting is going to be more useful. So in here, you can set up a subject, say, I want to say this is device enrolled status. And then you may want to say, hey, this is your system admin. I want to let you know that your device is now set up and enrolled. And you can have a company logo and footer, and you can have company name, show the contact information, and a company portal website link, so that when the device is enrolled, your user also gets that notification to just say, hey, we've noticed it and everything's looking good on our end. So it's just a little nice touch to a corporate setting that says we've got things in place and we are watching and we are aware of this device being enrolled and welcome on board. So it could be a nice gesture to welcome a user to say, welcome on board, your device is enrolled. So beware that you have that option there as well. So that basically covers this video. So I hope that has helped understand a little bit about Intune and enrollment, and talking about Windows Hello for Business, Windows Autopilot Device Preparation, as well as your enrollment notifications. Hopefully this video has helped you to actually inspire you to then roll out Autopilot. Even if you have devices already intra-joined, you can add them to a group that will be giving you the ability to do an Autopilot reset should you need to in the future. Please leave a comment. Let me know if this was helpful. If it wasn't, give me some feedback. Give me anything that's going to help in providing some more information for this platform where we go 0 to 60 in M365. Thanks again.